everybody. We are two Star Wars nerds, and today we are tackling the controversy of, is Anakin and Padme's relationship cheesy in Attack of the Clones? If you don't know, this is part of our Why We Love The Prequels series, and if you love the prequels, hit that red subscribe button, because not only do we just want to talk about why the prequels are awesome, we actually have something really cool coming up for prequel lovers in just a few weeks. Yeah. But, let's jump right into it. Here's the thing. You love this movie.
Yes,
I
do.
It's your number two.
I'm biased.
It's your number two. All Star Wars movies, number two. Crazy. Because a reason I say that, I don't want to, make you feel like your opinion isn't important, but you don't hear that much about this movie. And, for me growing up, I liked it, but I always complained about the romance. And I would actually skip this movie just because I was like, I just don't want to deal with the romance. And the older I got, I was open to it more. And you were really like, no, you gotta watch this. And so I started going back through it. And the more I've revisited it, I'm like, there's not that much romance. And the more I watch it, I'm like, it's not that bad. Mm-hmm. It's not amazing, but it's not that bad. But for you have a little bit of a different experience with it. So just kind of overall, before we do a deep dive into this, what has your take been on the romance from growing up, as a kid with this and teenager to now?
I never saw an issue with it. I didn't think it was cheesy. Again, like I keep saying, I didn't know it was controversial. I didn't know people hated the scene. Or the romance scene. Mm-hmm. So it's all news to me, that I'm finding out, within probably the past year, just looking more into Star Wars and stuff. Whereas before, when I was younger, I just looked at books and I watched the movies. I didn't really look at the internet. And so I think that was actually kind of a beautiful thing. It protected and guarded me, and I was able to just enjoy what I enjoyed without other people's opinions and things trying to sway me. So, I don't really have a lot to say. I enjoyed it, and I still do. I don't think it's over the top. And even when you would say it's like, oh, just full of romance, I'm like, it's like maybe 15 minutes of romance total.
Oh, and you're right on. The internet does horrendous things to your soul, and that's why I was so jaded about this. Granted, I didn't like it as much as a kid, but when I started finding out other people don't like it, I was like, finally, I can just full on hate validated. This. I did. I felt very validated. I was like, I'm not crazy. But you know what? Here's what I found interesting. What I feel like George Lucas was trying to do is like a Romeo and Juliet type, because you have these two very powerful people from very powerful backgrounds that aren't really allowed to be together. And I think from that, George took a lot of inspiration from Shakespearean dialogue, because like you hear Annie say things like yippee and like all sorts of stuff like that in The Phantom Menace. And then he has some kind of like cool boy Chad talk, with Obi-Wan. But then all of a sudden he's like saying some crazy stuff to Padme. And he's saying,
a passionate young man.
He is.
Yeah.
He's very passionate. And, with all of the turmoil and torment, in one of the lines he says like, you've been tormenting my soul. And it's like, that's an intense line to say to somebody, because I don't think Padme went into this movie with feelings for Anakin.
I don't think so either.
I think it was developing, like there was some attraction, but then the feelings start to develop when they're really isolated.
I think though, when she saw him, when Obi-Wan and Anakin first came in, I think she's like, oh my gosh, like that's Annie. But I think she's like, oh, he's good look. He's a cute looking guy now. Like he's not a little boy. So I think there was that initial attraction, but I don't think it was much more than that. It's just like, oh, you've grown up and you look good.
Yeah. And, a lot of people, myself included, have talked about the age difference is weird. But if you look at it, she's not actually like attracted to him in The Phantom Menace. And so then by the time Attack of the Clones rolls around, like it's not that weird.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is with this idea of Romeo and Juliet, Anakin and Padme, there's a secret romance against one of the most intense galactic wars that they have ever seen or experienced or even heard of. And so they literally get this like mini vacay of sorts that probably feels like a guilty pleasure, but they're tucked away in this beautiful location. And he's been dreaming about her for 10 years.
Right.
He's coming on strong.
Yes, he is.
Like, he is
No
unrelenting.
shame. Yeah.
But what I think maybe, like, for lack of a better term, turned him on, like what actually was like getting him into Padme was this idea that Padme wasn't like impressed with him.
Yeah.
She liked it when he would like do cool things like use the Force and feed her the butt end of a pear, which is like, dude, come on, give her the good stuff. But what was cool is when she's walking with some of her former delegates and some people that she like rubbed shoulders with in her past, she just like straight up dogs him in front of him.
Yeah.
And she's just like, oh, he's just a Padawan. Basically, don't listen to him. And they intentionally keep this smirk in there because it's like he's seeing she's a strong woman, and he likes that.
He respects that, yeah.
Because he's all about strength and power. And I think for him to get that pushback from Padme really sets things up. But this is, aside from all the fun stuff, where I think when we're looking at this objectively, is it cheesy? I think some of the dialogue is cheesy, but I think the passion is, he's been told, like you've pointed out in other videos, he's been told to suppress his emotions. He's been told to not form attachments.
Right.
And he's been separated from his mom, and he's really afraid. Like, am I going to lose? At this point, most of the romance is like, am I going to lose my mom?
Right.
Am I going to lose Padme? Am I going to be alone? Am I not going to have any love fulfilled in my life? And, obviously, with us being married, we understand attachment and that kind of love. And so, I mean, what do you think when you're thinking about Anakin in the Jedi Order being told he can't have attachments, and then he's dreaming about Padme for a decade, and then he's finally connected with her, now isolated with her? Like, you had some interesting thoughts on why he spoke the way he did.
Yeah, I think, well, first off, I think Yoda in Phantom Menace, that was why Yoda's like, this isn't good, like he shouldn't be trained as a Jedi, because he was 10 and he had already formed attachments with his mom and stuff. So I understand Yoda, and obviously it played out in Yoda's worst nightmare. But yeah, I think with how he was acting and just the cheesiness, I guess, or whatever you think of it, I think it's because he was a slave before. He wasn't at school like we were in, elementary, middle school. He didn't see how other people were interacting with their crushes. He didn't see how other people interacted with even friends. He was a slave, and he did have friends. He had Kitster, the wizard guy.
Yes, he had Kitster.
Yeah. And then he had Jar Jar, but he didn't have.
Why do you bring up Kitster and Jar Jar?
Those are like his friends in Phantom Menace.
Okay.
But, he didn't have a normal life. And so when he's expressing emotion, he's just sharing what's on his heart, rather than how we're taught, hey, you don't say everything you're thinking. Yeah. Whereas Anakin doesn't have that. He's like I said, he's a very passionate person, and that passion is just coming out. And it's that attachment, that strong love, that passion. And it's just because he doesn't know that he's supposed to hold it in, I don't think.
Yeah. And
he doesn't understand. He's like, why would I hold it in? Like, I'm feeling this strong feeling towards this person. I want them to know. And to him, it's like, yeah, why wouldn't I tell her? Like,
yeah, and
doesn't make sense.
I think in the whole movie, you see he's just very plain, and he's just very open. And I think his idea of letting go of attachments is to just not dwell on things to try and say things in the moment. Even though he does dwell, He's trying to just release things right then and there.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he comes on so strong. And because, I mean, he was talking circles with her. Like, he's talking about Obi-Wan. He's talking about the Jedi Order. And he's talking about his mom. And he's talking about his power.
He's
and
like venting.
His love.
Word vomiting.
And
because he hasn't processed.
Yeah. And then when he's sitting down with her, it does come out just very intensely. And so let's just make, I mean, not that we are any definitive voices at all, but if we were to make definitive statements, do you think the romance aspect of Attack of the Clones is cheesy at all?
No.
Not at all.
No.
0%.
No, like I said, I didn't know it was. Like, once you said it, I'm like, okay, I can see it. But no, I don't.
That's awesome. I think it's 10 to 15% cheesy. So I think 85 to 90% of it is actually really good. The older I get, I appreciate it more. But I think 10 to 15%, in particular, the writing and the lines. Just because I feel like when the allure of Star Wars is stripped away, I feel like those lines don't stand on their own. Not all of them, but I feel like in the context of the story they work. But there is just some stuff that just doesn't connect. But even with that is me nitpicking and finding like, okay, this stuff I don't like. But the overwhelming majority, even of the romance arc of this movie, I do like, and I don't think it's cheesy. And, let us know in the comments what you think, actually. This is surprisingly a very controversial topic that people get into, and we would love to know what your thoughts are. And with that, we are two Star Wars nerds, and may the Force be with you always.